All right, welcome to Armchair Analysis. This is the video that nobody has been waiting for. No, I'm just kidding. But it is draft grades time here on the channel, and I'm I feel like I was nice in a lot of senses. I gave looking through this, I gave a lot of B's, and there's some that I'm very willing to move around on. But we're just kind of basing this off of what we saw, what we liked, what we didn't like, and when I say we, I mean what I liked and didn't like in this draft. And to be honest, there's a lot of things to like. There's a lot of things not to like. There's a lot of things that you can be okay with, and I'm gonna go through these teams. If you see me looking over here, I am looking at the team's drafts. Forgive me, I don't remember every single team's draft picks top to bottom, but I do have my notes here. I have the team's picks as well, and we're gonna go A to Z, giving grades. Now, some I'm gonna elaborate on, some I'm not. Some I'm gonna just hurry through because some of them don't necessarily need elaboration. Some of them don't particularly need a true explanation, honestly. But some do. Some are going to get a lot of explanation to them. So we're just going to go through this and address it as we see necessary. What I do ask, though, is that if you could please watch through this video, leave a like, subscribe, comment down below, but comment and let me know what you guys think. What did I miss? Understand that you know your team better than I know your team. And that goes for really anything that I talk about. You know your team better than I do, 100%. However, I'm going at this from, airplane point of view, just kind of looking down, seeing the roster, seeing what I think is needed, going based on, I mean, truth be told, here, I'll tell you exactly what I use for my grading here. Did you feel your team needs? What was the player's production like in college? How were they as a player in college? And specifically in terms of trades, did you give up too much or too little or not enough? I mean, if you completely fleece somebody, you your trade or your draft grade goes up. If you gave up way too much in order to get a player, your draft grade goes down. It's plain and simple. I think it's fair. I think it's the right way to do so. Um, and there's some that are going to be what they're going to be. Another thing I should also mention is how are they going to fit into your team and how are they going to fit into your roster? That's another thing we'll have to worry about as well. With all that said, I'm not going to waste any more of your time. These are my 2025 NFL draft grades. Starting with Arizona, A to Z on the teams, okay? Starting with Arizona, I give this draft a B+. And there's a handful of reasons that I'm giving this a B+. Number one, I thought they did a great job of addressing their team needs. They did fantastic. The one thing they did not get that they could have was a wide receiver. However, they addressed everything else, including an offensive lineman, who I think went very low. I think Hayden Connor is going to be a pretty decent offensive lineman in the NFL. I think he's going to fit in here pretty well. I'm not terribly concerned about that for Arizona, but they addressed everything else. They addressed cornerback with Will Johnson and Denzel Burke, who are two really solid cornerbacks coming out of the Big Ten, coming from rival schools. That's going to be a little fun. Will Johnson slid to the second round and slid to the mid-second round at that due to injuries. I'm not terribly concerned. That's kind of what bumps him up to that B+, but they also get Jordan Burch in the third round. I think that's a really good, really high-quality pick in the third round. Cody Simon, Denzel Burke, I think these guys are solid, steady players that either can fill in should injuries happen this year or could potentially work their way to starters, especially in the case of Cody Simon. And then the rest of it, Keaton Crawford, he's coming from Nevada. It's hard to judge what he's going to be in the NFL, given the competition he played in college. I like the pick. I think Keaton Crawford has a lot of tools that he can use and develop. I thought this was a really solid draft for Arizona. I give it a B+. Atlanta. Two things here. You had 5 picks total in the draft. You made the most of them. You actually had a really solid draft. However, I dropped you almost a whole letter grade. I would have probably given this draft a B, given what they had and what they used them for. maybe a B minus, but it drops you all the way down to a C plus. And honestly, I might drop that down to a C. And it's because you traded way too much to get James Pierce. I mentioned this on Loudmouth Sports Podcast, which is over on Loudmouth Sports if you want to check that out. But I mentioned this there, and I'm going to mention it again here. James Pierce, it's not that he's not a good player. However, what you gave up to get James Pierce, given what went around your second round pick, which included, and I'm gonna go by round here, and I'm gonna look in the second round, and given the guys like Donovan Ezeraku, JT Tuimola, Nick Scorton, Olu Oladejo, those guys, and even Mike Green, who slid all the way to late second round, based on some of the things off the field that we had heard teams mention and had heard mentioned in the pre-draft process. Given all the things that went around that second round pick that they would have had, it's just too much to give up, including a 2026 first round pick for James Pierce. You didn't address the things you need to, and honestly, I don't see this Atlanta team improving in 2020. In 2025, honestly, from 8 and 9, I only see them really going down from here because everybody else did improve in the draft or over the offseason. This is across the board. As a matter of fact, I'm going to make a change live. We're going to make this a C for the Atlanta Falcons. So, not my favorite draft of them all, but however, it's not the worst. It's not the worst grade I'm going to give. It could be. It definitely could be if I were to look back at this and maybe have a little bit different of opinion. But we're not going to worry about that for right now. The Baltimore Ravens are my first A, and they're not my only A, but they are my first A, and I did not give many of them. This is an A minus for the Ravens. They addressed every single team need. They got better in every single position, and they had some, what I would consider maybe a couple steals later in this draft, specifically getting LeJontay Wester, wide receiver out of Colorado. I think he has the potential if he gets around the right guys and gets the right kind of training and help behind him, that LeJontay Wester could come out to be an absolute steal for this draft class. Other things that they did, they addressed the offensive line, getting Emory Jones. They got Carson Benson from Alabama A&M. They grabbed a guard, Garrett Dellinger, another guy who I think late round going to be kind of just a steady offensive lineman, could be a career backup. Who knows? But even then, he's not a bad backup, at least coming out in 2025. But then obviously there's the stars of this draft, right? There's the Malachi Starks pick in the first round, which is huge. He's going to pair really well with Kyle Hamilton, continuing to improve an already fantastic secondary. You have Mike Green, who's going to be improve an already really good defensive line. And then you got Bilal Kone, who comes out of Western Michigan, a cornerback, who I think is going to progress really well, play really well at the NFL level. I give the Ravens an A minus in this 2025 draft. The Buffalo Bills, really the simplest thing is a B plus. They addressed all but one team need. They filled out their, I thought they filled out a really solid draft class. They got a couple steals in there. I thought Jordan Hancock, Dorian Strong are good picks late in the third day. You get a wide receiver in Caden Prather, who I think can have a pretty successful career. He's just young. I mean, another year of college could have done him wonders, but I think he'll develop fine as time goes on. You get what I would consider maybe a steal with Maxwell Harrison late in the first round. And then you also get TJ Sanders out of South Carolina at defensive tackle. Just a lot of good addressing positions and trying to improve upon some things. Not a whole lot really to say here. Just a solid, steady B+. The Carolina Panthers addressed all but one team need. They get a B+ from me as well. Of course, Teteroa McMillan is probably the biggest name here, but there's a lot of other things they did good. They got Nick Scorton and Princely Umanmielen back-to-back rounds, address the edge immediately. But they get other guys in here too. Lathan Ransom, I think, is going to be a decent safety. Mitchell Evans is going to come in, and I think he's going to be a solid tight end in the future. And then you get Jimmy Horn Jr., who can progress and play pretty well. I think this is overall a solid draft class. I like what Carolina did. They addressed what they needed and are just going to focus for the future. I'm going to stick to B+ here. The Chicago Bears, the more I look at this, the more I feel like maybe a B is a little too high. Maybe I should go B- here. I don't hate it. By no means do I hate it. Colston Loveland, Luther Burden being their first two picks, they address their needs pretty well, minus an edge rusher. Nobody here particularly excites me other than Colston Loveland. I think Luther Burden has the potential to be a solid wide receiver, especially with the offense that they are trying to put together. And I think that's why I like Colston Loveland so much, is because Ben Johnson is a guy who I think knows how to utilize tight ends and make a lot of really solid decisions with them. So the Bears, I'm gonna go with a B minus. I'm gonna adjust that on the fly from a B. It's not a bad draft. It's just there's nothing that really stands out as like, man, that's the best pick. One of the best picks of the draft that you would need to really hold it steady on a B for me. The Cincinnati Bengals. I'm not gonna lie to you. I think I'm gonna turn this down into a D. And I mean, I'm gonna drop this from a C minus to a D, a flat D. I don't like a lot of this stuff, right? That Taj Brooks is an interesting pick at running back late in the draft, but they didn't address anything early in the draft that they needed. They didn't really address much that they needed other than Shamar Stewart, an edge rusher. They did get Demetrius Knight, who I think is a solid linebacker, but I don't know that he's a star NFL linebacker, and that's coming from somebody who, I mean, you see this stuff up here, right? So I can't go the right direction, but you see that stuff, right? That's somebody who's watched South Carolina for his entire time there, and he's not, to me, he's not a star linebacker. He's not really a guy who's going to jump off the page to you. Cincinnati, I think, did a really poor job of addressing their needs. They're going to have a D grade for me. The Browns, I think I gave a little bit too much credit to as well. I'm going to drop them down. I'm going to drop them to a C minus from a C. I think they did a lot of things well, and specifically the Harold Fannin pick. I'm a huge fan of the Harold Fannin pick. I'm a huge fan of Mason Graham at 5. Huge fan of Carson Schweisinger, and I really like Quinshon Judkins. But you pick 2 quarterbacks in the late rounds. You also get another running back. You pick 2 running backs and 2 quarterbacks in this draft, and you didn't even need a running back. What you really needed to address was your offensive line, and you didn't touch it. You didn't even try to touch it. The Browns go down to a C minus for me. I think there's a lot of good picks here. I think there's 4 good picks here. I think Shadur Sanders, I don't know if I'm going to consider him a steal, but I think that it's a good late pick. It's just this entire draft it was just a Cleveland Browns draft, to be completely honest. C minus. The Dallas Cowboys, I thought, did a great job. They got Tyler Booker, Donovan Ezeraku, Siobhan Ravel, who I'm a huge fan of. They got Jaden Blue in the 5th round, and they filled the rest of their needs pretty well. The one thing they didn't go after was a wide receiver. I gotta be honest, I'm a little concerned that they didn't do that, but maybe there's something else that they have in mind. I'm not sure. I'm giving them a B because I do like a lot of this. I think they got a couple steals with Donovan Ezeraku and Siobhan Ravel. You get Tyler Booker, is going to be a very steady offensive lineman. You needed to address that, and they did. The rest of the draft, I think, is okay. I think there's an okay draft the rest of the way through. So I'm going to give them a B. The Denver Broncos did a great job addressing corner, which they didn't really need, but they did get Jahdae Barron, who I think fits into this defense really well. You address running back with R.J. Harvey, who I think he was one of my favorite running backs in the draft, and I didn't know where he was going to go. I'm excited to see how they use him. But R.J. Harvey was not really a top 5 running back on the board, and here he is near the top. I think he did go in the top 5 of running backs. I could be mistaken there, but I think that's how that lined up. You get some guys later. Pat Bryant, I think, is going to be a pretty solid wide receiver. I don't know how much I love 3rd round pick there, but I think he's going to be okay. Savion Jones, Q Robinson, I think those are 2 solid edge rushers. I don't know that you needed 2 edge rushers. You really needed to address the interior defensive line. The Broncos, I'm going to go B minus. I thought they were okay, but they just didn't address the defensive line the way I wanted to. Detroit, coming off their 15-2 season, how did they draft? Well, I'm giving it a B. I think Tyleik Williams is going to be a solid guy up the middle on the defensive line. He's a really solid anchor point for any defensive line. Tate Ratledge, they addressed offensive line at the guard position with Ratledge and Miles Frazier. You addressed your wide receiver need with Isaac Tesla, who I think is going to be a really interesting player out of this draft. I don't know what to expect, but I think that his stock went up by how fast he was at the combine. He's kind of surprised some people with his speed. Isaac Tesla is going to be a guy that I'm going to have my eyes on watching Detroit this year, seeing how he fits into this offense. And then he closes out with Dan Jackson and then Dominic Lovett, who I think is a steal in the 7th round. We all know about the off the field issues at Georgia, which don't just stay with him, but we know about his off field issues. We'll see. I think it's a good pick. It's just a matter of how will he progress and mature as an NFL player. Since they're at the beginning of my list, I'm going to go ahead and no, I'm not going to do that. I won't go out of order for this, but the Green Bay Packers get a B+, and it's really because they addressed a need early, and one of their biggest needs early, and that's a wide receiver. And they go 1st round and 3rd round. They get 2 wide receivers in the first 3 rounds in their first 3 picks. And Matthew Golden, Savion Williams, 2 good wide receivers, 2 polar opposite wide receivers. Savion Williams kind of matches the Marquez Valdez-Scantling style that we saw over the last couple of years. Matthew Golden addresses a style we haven't seen in Green Bay in a while, which is speed. 2 weapons for Jordan Love. They addressed a lot of other things too, to include offensive line with Anthony Belton and John Williams. They grab Barron Sorrell, edge rusher. Colin Oliver is one of my favorite picks from this specific draft for the Packers. A really steady linebacker who I think can grow and become an every down backer. Then you get Micah Robinson. I like that pick. I think that's a steal at corner out of Tulane. Packers get a B+ for me. Again, there's a lot of Bs. I think a lot of teams did a really good job addressing what they needed and addressing it with good talent. The Houston Texans address their needs in an interesting way, getting Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel. They take both of the Iowa State wide receivers in this draft and do a great job of that. They got Ariante Ezeri from Minnesota, a good offensive tackle. Going to bolster the line there. The one thing they didn't do was get an interior offensive lineman. I'm not too concerned. I think they'll address that how they see fit. Jalen Smith from USC, a cornerback, is going to be an interesting pick, but Jalen Reed I like in the 6th round of safety. And then Luke Lachey, their final pick of the draft in the 7th round. I like Luke Lachey a lot here. We'll see how they use him. We'll see how he develops, but I think he could turn into a pretty solid guy put into this offense. The Colts. I gave a B- too, and I think it's because I'm not overly thrilled with this entire class. There are things I like. Tyler Warren, JT Tuimoloau, love those 2 picks. There are other things, such as DJ Giddens late. I'm not sure how much of a fan I am of that pick. Riley Leonard, you basically just got another Daniel Jones. And that's no offense because I love Riley Leonard. For those who know about the college football stuff that I used to do, you know that I was a huge Riley Leonard fan, whether it was at Duke or Notre Dame. I thought he was a great quarterback for college. I don't know that he's an NFL quarterback. And he really does match a lot of the same traits that we see out of Daniel Jones as it is, who is going to be competing for a starting quarterback spot this year. Not a lover of that pick. And then you also get Hunter Wooler, I think kind of as a steal at safety in the 7th round. That's going to be a fun guy to watch. Maybe not this year, but in the next 2 or 3 years, I really want to look back at this draft and see how Hunter Wooler stacks up from where he was drafted. Jacksonville gets a B-, and it's because they didn't address a lot of their needs, and they didn't do it very well either. The biggest thing they did do, I thought they did well addressing the interior offensive line, Jonah Monheim and Wyatt Milan. I also think that anytime you get Travis Hunter, or a player with the caliber that Travis Hunter puts out, you automatically get at least into the B category. But you addressed cornerback twice in the first 2 rounds. Technically, I know Travis Hunter's probably going to be your offensive weapon, your wide receiver. But you address cornerback twice by technicality. You get Wyatt Milam, again, a really good pick. But then you get Bayshaw Tootin. I think that's an okay pick. He could kind of turn into like a Maurice Jones-Drew type of a player. I would say that might be a fair comparison for the Jags. So that's interesting. Jack Kaiser, I like. Jalen McLeod, I think solid. Raywan Lane of Navy. I like this pick. I really do. LeQuint Allen, solid pick. I'm just not a lover of this entire class. I think there's a lot of things that they could do, and they also only address 2 out of 5 team needs. That's where the B minus comes in. This would probably be a B, maybe even a B plus, but you just didn't address the things you need, and this team's not good enough to be missing that many team needs. I guess you did get a wide receiver though. Guess you got 3 out of 5. If we're counting Travis Hunter as a wide receiver like they plan, they got 3 out of 5. But I'm still going to go with a B minus. The Kansas City Chiefs get a B plus from me, and they address all they addressed every need, including offensive tackle Josh Simmons, good pickup. A late slide. This guy was a top 10 talent, and he had a late slide due to his injury last year. But I think this is solid. Omar Norman Lott up the middle is going to be interesting for me. Some other guys that we just didn't see, but I mean, we've seen Kansas City hit a lot, and I really love Jalen Royals. That's probably my favorite pick for the Chiefs this draft. Jalen Royals. That's your guy to watch out of the 2025 draft if you're a Chiefs fan. The LA Chargers get a B, and I almost made this a B plus. I really loved everything they did here. Amarian Hampton, first round. Love it. I think that he fits into the Jim Harbaugh style offensively. Hard to be upset. Trey Harris, I think, fits into this style as well, but they also get Keandre Lambert-Smith, who was he faded last year at Auburn. Really didn't have the success that he had at one time at Penn State. Now you could blame probably quarterback play a little bit for that. Love Kyle Kennard in the 4th round, edge rusher from South Carolina. Got to see him a lot. That whole entire South Carolina D-line, to include Dylan Stewart in the future, are all going to go in the draft. And I'm a big fan of that. Oronde Gadsden is a good tight end who can play out wide in the slot. He can also be on the line of scrimmage. I think he fits in very similarly to this Jim Harbaugh offense. Then you get some guys late in this thing. R.J. Mickens, who I really like as a safety. Triquise Bridges is going to be interesting to see how he progresses, if he makes a difference on this draft class or not. Overall, I really like this class. I do a lot. It's a B for me for the Chargers. The LA Rams, with their handful of picks, it's okay. But they get a B. It bumps up probably from a C for me to a B, simply because I love the trade they got with Atlanta to get a 2026 first. Helps them address their potential need for a quarterback next year. Remember, we know Matt Stafford's on the back end of his career and probably closer to retirement than we think. So they're gonna bolster up for next year and make their attempt. But they didn't just completely whiff on this draft either. Terrence Ferguson, I think, is a good tight end prospect. Josiah Stewart, I think, is a good edge rusher. Other than that, Ty Hamilton's pretty solid up the middle. If that's who they go with at defensive tackle, great. Everything else is just kind of average to me. It's a B for the Rams, specifically for that trade. The Raiders get a B minus for me. They had 11 picks and only filled 3 of 5 team needs, per se, in my opinion. They got some good players. Ashton Jeanty, I thought, was a good player. I thought Jack Beck was good. I didn't think he was second round good, but here we are. Darian Porter's, I think, a solid corner. They got a couple offensive tackles, back-to-back picks, actually, of offensive tackles. Dante Thornton at Tennessee was okay. Tonka Hemingway, I like. And then they get Cam Miller at the end, North Dakota State quarterback. If you're going to get a quarterback, you probably needed to take somebody else. I wasn't a huge fan of Cam Miller at North Dakota State. We'll see. We'll see how all this turns out. It's interesting. It's Tommy Mellott. Wasn't that the quarterback at Montana State last year? Can I find his College stat? Yeah, he was a quarterback. Interesting. Tommy Malott is now a wide receiver. So you get the North Dakota State and the Montana State quarterbacks for different positions. Interesting. I'm sorry, I just now noticed that. Still, it's a B minus for me for Vegas. For the Dolphins, I went with a C plus. No, I did not. I went with a B minus. If this was 2024's draft and you get Ollie Gordon and Quinn Ewers, everybody's excited. It's 2025's draft and you get Ollie Gordon and Quinn Ewers, and everybody's not so much excited. Ollie Gordon fell off a cliff last year. It was non-existent, really, for Oklahoma State in the majority of their games, especially in league play. Quinn Ewers was just... I mean, he probably could benefit from another year of football, but we all kind of know where we're at with that and what the situation was. Everything else is just kind of average. I like the Kenneth Grant pick. I think Kenneth Grant's a good player, but beyond all of that, I'm not in love with this draft from the Dolphins. I thought there was a lot more that they could have done, especially addressing the offensive line that's been such a problem for them and has resulted in so many injuries for Tua. I just thought there was more to be done, and it didn't get done. So it's a B minus. It probably could be a C plus. Honestly, it could probably... I'm actually going to drop this all the way down to a C minus. I don't like this at all. I'm looking at this again. What in the hell was I thinking? C minus for the Dolphins. The Minnesota Vikings had 5 picks. They drafted well. They didn't draft great. Donovan Jackson, I like the pick. I think he's a really good guard. I think he's going to help the interior O-line. Ty Felton, I think, is going to be an okay wide receiver. I like him. Gavin Bartholomew, I love as a tight end. I really do. I think that's kind of one of the bigger steals at that position in the draft. Kobe King is okay. Tyrion Ingram Dawkins from Georgia, interesting. It's just the draft wasn't really... I don't think it really helps Minnesota at all. I give them a C plus. It was average. They did what they could with what they had, and that's really all I can say. They did what they could with what they had. It's not overly my favorite. I might drop this down to a C, to be completely honest. It's okay. C is what I'm going to go with here. The Patriots addressed every single place that they needed to, and they did it in a solid spot. One of my favorite picks out of this draft was Kyle Williams of Washington State. I thought he was really solid. He was a big weapon for John Mateer last year, and what was a really successful Washington State season by all standards. Big fan of that. I thought they did a good job just addressing a lot of the things and places that they needed to. To include Will Campbell, of course, on the offensive line. TreVeyon Henderson is going to be I don't know if he's better currently than Ramondre Stevenson. He will build to be a solid every down running back for New England, at least for the time being. And I think he'll translate well. I really do. I have a lot of faith in TreVeyon Henderson. Everything else is just solid filling needs, and I think they did a really good job. I think they added a lot of depth to this team. It's now just a matter of on the field. On the field, are they going to improve? Are they going to stay the same? I think helping out the offense and helping out this O-line, it was the biggest thing they could have done, and they did a really good job of that. New Orleans. They get a B minus for me because they addressed a lot of positions and addressed a lot of things that I thought were necessary. The one thing that drops this draft grade a lot for me is Tyler Shuck. I don't know what New Orleans sees in Tyler Shuck to be a second-round pick. I don't know what New Orleans sees in Tyler Shuck to be the guy that they pick over the majority of this quarterback class. Now, granted, I don't love this class at all. I don't think this is great. But you basically just drafted. So here's what you have if you're New Orleans. You have Derek Carr, injured. You have Spencer Rattler, not injured, wasn't great, wasn't terrible, was probably your best option as a backup. Then you have Jake Haener and Tyler Shuck. I think these are two of the exact same player. Just being honest, I think Shuck and Hainer are the exact same guy. So who do you go with Derek Carr injured? You didn't just draft him, and he certainly wasn't already on your roster in Jake Haener. He was on your roster in the sense of Spencer Rattler, though. New Orleans, I think, just didn't do a great job of trying to get a quarterback here. Especially that's really what they wanted. They could have done so many other things. Not my favorite. Not my choice whatsoever here. And I could be wrong, but his draft, his combine footage, his pro day footage, everything for Tyler Shuck did not sit well with me. Maybe he's a good student of the game, and maybe that's what they love. I could agree with that. I think he picked up a lot of offenses really well. Everywhere he went, he picked it up. I just can't get behind it. One of my favorite pick here, personally, and I'm going beyond just the first 3 rounds. I like Devin Neal a lot. I think he fits into this offense. I think he could kind of play that Deuce McAllister, Reggie Bush, like 06 to 09 kind of role, and be a solid running back if they choose to make him, part of a key part of this offense. So I don't mind that. I think that's probably my favorite pick here. The Jets, ironically, had one of my favorite drafts. They got a B+ for me. The reason they get a B+ is because they address their team needs outside of a defensive tackle. I don't think it was personally the biggest need for me, so I'm not going to go with that. I'm not going to punish them for that. But they did a lot of things really well. You see Armand Membu, that was a big need. They needed him. They needed an offensive lineman. They got it. They get Mason Taylor, a tight end, in the second round. Everybody was all on the Jets to take Tyler Warren. That didn't happen. Mason Taylor falls. It doesn't even fall to them. They just get him kind of right at face value with that 10th pick in the second round. I think he fits in pretty well here and is a really solid tight end that, he may be third to Loveland and Warren. Do not misunderstand that does not mean he is less valuable than those two. I think Mason Taylor fits in really well as a receiving threat for the Jets. Azariah Thomas, I like. Arian Smith, I think I like that. I don't know that I love it, but I like it. Malachi Moore, Francisco Malagoa, and Tyler Barron to close out the draft in the 4th and 5th rounds each. I like both of those, or I like all 3 of those. So the Jets, I think, did a really good job. They're a B+. They're probably as close to an A as I could give them. Like, of all the B+ I have on this list, they are as close to an A of any of them as there could be on this list. Now, I unintentionally skipped my Giants. I gave the Giants a B- here. Did not really address the offensive line the way I wanted them to, and Marcus Imbo is not the guy that I would have preferred out of this class, to be completely honest. Abdul Carter, it's hard not to love him. It's hard not to like Jackson Dart in the sense of what Brian Dable explained and has said about Jackson Dart and his potential. It's hard not to like Jackson Dart as a guy who was a big fan of his in college. But it's hard to like it. I think we got a steal in Darius Alexander at defensive tackle. I really like that pick. I like Cam Scatterbo. Even though we didn't particularly need a running back, I don't mind the pick. I like Thomas Fidone. I thought he's a really solid tight end at Nebraska. I thought he played really well. He's also an absolute menace, giving himself tattoos. I didn't even know about that until I saw it on Twitter, and I did follow up. That is true. And then there's Corey Black, a corner from Oklahoma State, which I go back or forth on. I didn't love it. There's a lot of things I wish were addressed. There's a lot of things that I would have liked to have seen. Maybe a wide receiver to pair, with the team that we already have, to include Malik Neighbors, of course. But I just don't love it. There's nothing here that I love. The Giants, B-. I feel like I'm explaining all these grades, so maybe we'll speed up a little bit. Philly, look, they address a lot of depth pieces. Maybe I'm being a little too hard on their draft. I gave them a C. Just because they didn't really address some of their needs, but they what needs do they really have, I guess, at the end of the day. Don't misunderstand me that this is actually a solid draft class. This is pretty good, and C is steady. We'll see. I could look really dumb for a C here, but I'm giving them a C. I just wasn't overly loving what they went with here. But it's not hateful. It's not hateful either. Pittsburgh gets a C minus. So here's part of my problem here. Okay, their team need was a quarterback. They did not go after a quarterback. And again, not a loving class for quarterbacks out of my side of things. I just don't love it. But I don't like Will Howard as your pick. If that's your guy, if that's who you're going to take to try to be your next quarterback, I don't love Will Howard. You didn't go after a wide receiver, which doesn't help anything in the matter of you needed one. You didn't address anything on the offensive line, which, by the way, you needed. You made one pick that I absolutely love. It's Caleb Johnson. That's my favorite pick from the Steelers this whole draft. Derek Harmon, I thought they got it at a great rate, though. They got him at 21st overall. And while the fan base wasn't a big fan of it, I'm a big fan of it. I think he takes a lot of attention off of TJ Watt, takes a lot of attention up the middle here for this Pittsburgh defensive line because of what he can produce in the pass rush. There's things to like. Carson Bruner, I think, is an interesting pick down there in the 7th round. Jack Sawyer is interesting. I don't love Jack Sawyer. I just don't. And it has nothing to do with fandom as a college football fan. It has nothing to do really with anything other than the fact that I'm not a huge fan of it. I do think he's a smart player, though. I think he's really smart. And that has been shown time and time again throughout his career at OSU. He's just not my favorite pick in the NFL. Therefore, Pittsburgh gets a B minus. Sorry, a C minus. The Seattle Seahawks are my second A team of the draft. They get an A minus as well. The reason they get an A minus is because I think they got a handful of steals in this draft. I do. I think they did a great job. Gray Zabel. A lot of people think they reached. I think Gray Zabel's a really solid offensive lineman. He addresses the interior line really well for them. Nick Emanwori. A steal. This was a first-round talent. This guy almost had the potential to go after. What is it? Some people have said he had one of the best combines of anybody. He was nearing a lot of records during the combine. Nick Emanwori was a first-round talent that dropped to the second round, and dropped to the second round because there's a lot of really good talent in this draft at a lot of positions, especially defensively. That's a huge grab in the secondary. They also get Elijah Arroyo, who I think is going to be a decent tight end in the NFL. I think he's solid. We'll see. Jalen Milroe. Let's talk about this Jalen Milroe pick for a minute. We love what he can do in the run game. Everybody does. Who else have we loved what they could do in the run game, but we weren't sure about them as a passer going into the NFL? Coming from Alabama, of all places. It was Jalen Hurts. Well, he came from Oklahoma, I guess, technically. But he was at Alabama. We all know what we're talking about here. Jalen Milroe has the potential. He has a great arm. He really does. Yeah, he has all the arm strength in the world. The arm talent, the ability to place the ball accurately. Those are all questionable things for Milroe going into 2025 and really going into his NFL career. People wonder if he's going to have an NFL career. With the right coaching, with the right help, look, you can't teach arm strength. You just can't. Some guys either have it naturally or they don't. But what you can teach is those little things to adjust accuracy, those little mechanical flaws that adjust your accuracy. And some of it's footwork, some of it's arm angle, some of it is just simply not knowing. Jalen Milroe has all the teachable aspects of a quarterback to become somebody that we could see succeed at a high level. I loved Jalen Milroe when Kalen DeBoer came to Alabama. It didn't work out the way I thought it would because at the end of the day, that accuracy wasn't helped. There was not a lot of things there that were taught. There was a mental aspect that I think was missing and wasn't addressed at the early point of the season. Now, as they went, they got better. But early in the season, I thought that they missed out on a handful of things like that. I think Jalen Miller has a lot of potential here. I like the pick a lot. I do. I think that he actually was deserving of where he went. There's other things I thought they got at a really good rate. They got Torrey Horton in the 5th round, a really good wide receiver out of Colorado State. They got Ricky White in the 7th round. I think he's a really solid wide receiver from UNLV. You get Damian Martinez in the 7th round. I think Damian Martinez is kind of the unsung bell cow type running back that we want to see in the NFL. There's a lot of things to love from Seattle here. I'm giving them an A-. San Francisco addressed a lot of their needs. They didn't address them in the way that I thought they would. I am going to give this draft a D+, because I think you missed out on some opportunities on offense to address some of the things that you have lost, to include a trade of Deebo Samuel to the Commanders. So, with all that said, you don't address offensive line. I think that's a huge need. You don't address wide receiver. I think that's actually a bigger need than some of the defensive positions you went after. There's things I like, as there is with every class. Michael Williams, Nick Martin, Alfred Collins. Those first 3 picks are fantastic. I even think Upton Stout's a bit of an underrated pick. But everything else in this class is not really lovable or even personally likable. I'm not a big fan of this class at all. San Francisco gets a D+. Tampa, the Buccaneers, with their 6 picks in this draft, I thought did okay. Benjamin Morrison, I like. Emeka Ibuka, I like. Tez Johnson, I kind of like. I don't love, but I like it. However, there's just a few other things that I think they could have addressed. They went after 2 corners and 2 edge rushers. I didn't think they needed 2 corners or 2 edge rushers. I think these were insurance guys. Specifically, Jacob Parrish and Elijah Roberts, I think, were kind of their insurance picks to just in case Morrison or Walker didn't work out, or in case they needed some depth on the edge or at corner. They did gather a weapon or 2, Tez Johnson and Emeka Ibuka, for Baker Mayfield, but they didn't address their front 7. Well, not in the way that they should have. They didn't really get a linebacker, unless they plan to use one of these guys, Walker or Roberts, as linebackers. They didn't address that. They didn't really address the offensive line the way I kind of thought they might. Now, they didn't need to, but I thought they might try. I felt like they were a little worse for wear last year. They didn't do terrible. They're average. I give them a C+. Tennessee. I don't hate a lot of this draft for them. I do like Cam Ward at 1. If there was any quarterback to go in the first round, it's going to be Cam Ward. I think Cam Ward has this humble side to him, especially coming out as a 0-star recruit, going through Incarnate Word, going to Washington State, and then having that ability to go to the draft, knowing he was going to be a 3rd to 5th round pick, saying, you know what, I'm going to stay back. I'm going to transfer again, which I don't think was terrible, and I'm going to go to Miami, and we're going to see what happens at a Power 5 level. And he did a really good job at the end of the day, and put himself in position to be the number 1 pick, which he was, and I don't think there's any problem with that. I think Tennessee needed that. Needed to just take the chance on a quarterback. They get Oladejo from UCLA in the 2nd round, Kevin Winston in the 3rd. Chimera DK, I think has potential at wide receiver. Alec Iomenor, also in the 4th round, wide receiver from Stanford. I like that pick. Again, could just be the overall production, but a lot of times wide receivers who are solid in college go pretty well in the NFL, especially when they just have overall talent. Tight end Gunnar Helm, I don't hate it. Jackson Slater from Sacramento State, I like the pick. I think it has potential. Khalil Mullings, I'm not hateful towards. I think he's a decent running back, and I think he can play a similar style to what they've kind of looked for in their running backs as of late. All in all, I'm not hateful to this class. I give it a B plus. I think they did a good job addressing needs. They did a good job taking what they could get, and I thought they did well of just being balanced, trying to make sure they address defensive needs and things that maybe they wanted defensively, on top of addressing the things that they really needed to address with the offense as well, which was arguably their way, way worse part of this team. So I give them a B plus. I thought they did a great job. The Commanders. Okay. This is going to sound bad. This is going to sound really bad. I don't think they did a great job at all. I give them a D plus. They're not terrible though. Josh Connerly's a good pick. Trey Amos has potential to be a good pick. But then you get to the bottom half of this, and specifically like this Kane Medrano, Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt. I don't love either of those two. I'm not hateful. I don't love them. I just thought Washington didn't do a great job of attacking this draft in a way that really puts them over the top. They didn't add anything huge to this team, and truth be told, I don't think there's a lot of guys in this draft class that are going to make an impact in 2025, other than Josh Connerly, of course. Otherwise, I don't think there's a lot of impact in 2025, which hurts a little bit. I give him a D plus. So all in all, my best grade of the draft, I'm going to give the edge to Seattle over Baltimore. But they both had an A minus, and those were my two A's this entire draft. My worst grade is Cincinnati, D. I thought they were terrible. I did not love this at all from them. So let me know what you guys thought. I took a lot of time on this. I took a lot of time to really dig deep and try to determine what I liked. And a lot of these drafts really did end up being the same. I thought a lot of teams did good jobs, did better than I probably could have done. Just kind of the goal, right? They're the GMs, and I'm the guy sitting here. I'm the armchair analyst, as they call it, right? So, yeah, I thought they did a great job. I thought there was a lot of things to be happy with. But overall, there are some that I just don't like. I don't see it. I don't understand it. Maybe that's for me to understand at a later time. So again, let me know what you guys think. Leave in the comments down below. Again, you know your team better than I do. I'm not claiming to know everything I need to know about all 32 NFL teams. I'm more likely to know everything about 134 or 135 college football teams at this point. And I think that's probably more likely where we will agree. But here, 32 teams, 32 drafts, 32 grades. Thank you guys for tuning in. I'll see you guys in the next one.